Hello, so today I'm going to be presenting on how transgender people and communities were involved in trans technology design processes. This paper was authored by myself along with Nham, Hibby, Thach, and Aloe DeGuia, and Hibby is going to be co-presenting with me today. So we all know how things are supposed to work in human-centered design processes. So for example, this is a diagram from the Nielsen Norman Group website on design thinking. And in this process, users are supposed to be involved in the empathize phase and then later on in the testing phase. But are designers and developers actually doing this, especially when it comes to designing with marginalized groups? We wanted to understand how marginalized users are involved in design processes so that we can go beyond considering how design processes should work to eliminate how they actually work in practice in this context. And the context that we're looking at in this study is transgender technology. So trans technology, as defined in prior work, is technology designed to help address some of the challenges that trans people face in the world. And it's often designed in response to the lack of trans inclusion in more mainstream technologies. So our research question in this work was, to what extent and in what ways were trans people and communities involved in trans technology design processes? For our methods in this work, we did 104 interviews with 115 trans tech creators throughout 2021 and 2022. And our recruitment involved criterion sampling, where we contacted creators, designers, and developers of trans technologies, and we also did some snowball sampling as well. And for data analysis, we used reflexive thematic analysis. So these are just a few examples of trans technologies in our data set. So it included lots of different types of technologies, so ranging from things like websites and apps to things like augmented and virtual reality, as well as things like supplies. So I'm going to now hand it over to Hibby, who will be presenting on our results.
Thank you. So for our results, we found that trans technologies can be most impactful when they involve trans people and communities in design. So trans community involvement enables technology to best address trans needs and challenges. Trans perspectives and lived experiences enable a reworking and rethinking of how technology design can benefit trans people. So here we have our 6 results sections. Very quickly, they're human-centered and participatory design processes, requirements gathering and initial research, gathering and incorporating feedback from users, trans people and communities involved in design processes, user testing and iteration, and finally, successful design versus successful deployment. So before we speak on the specific sections, quotes, etc., we wanted to talk about why we identify the people we identify today in this presentation. So most participants in this research explicitly wanted to be identified rather than anonymous. So we use their full names here with permission. Other participants wanted us to use first names only or pseudonyms or wanted to remain anonymous. So we respect those wishes and report their names based on what they wanted. So Guilherme Colucci Pereira and his collaborators used participatory design methods over a period of more than 6 months to create LGBT Trust, an app to help increase safety for trans and queer people in Brazil. The process involved a series of workshops in which participants were involved in the design process. Pereira began the project without a sense of what exactly he and the design workshop participants would be creating, and left the direction up to workshop participants. As he says here, this is very deeply related to all these concerns about violence in Brazil. So it was natural to talk about and to think about safety, how to create a safe place, to share about what places you should be careful, where you should not go. But it was not given by me. It was not my choice at the beginning. It was just the natural development of the project. So in this human-centered design process, Pereira learned, along with participants, that safety was a primary concern, and that the technology design should focus on safety. So Solace, a transition resource app, gathered feedback via a user survey. As Robbie Catherine Anthony from Solace says here, one of the biggest complaints we got was that there's no way to change your name in the app itself, which is an incredibly glaring design decision on our end. But that was one of those points that we're able to say, okay, how do we actually design around this? Because this problem probably reflects more than 51% of this population. So in this way, gathering user feedback enabled Solace to discover an issue that trans people typically face in mainstream software, but would not expect to encounter in a trans-designed app. So here, Dylan Pare described their Creative Futures project, in which they worked with 3 trans youth to create virtual reality or VR art for immersive storytelling that eventually became 2 films. As they say here, the linear film would tell the story of how these youth came up with their ideas of what stories they wanted to tell and what they were hoping people would learn from their projects. The 360 film was where you actually can go into the art with them, and they tell you about their art that they've created and what that means to them. So this project enabled Pare to tell diverse trans stories using this innovative medium, and it was also a way to teach VR skills to young people. An important tension that we discovered here is that many of the most successful human-centered design processes we encountered took place in academic settings, and the technology was then not actually deployed. On the other hand, the technologies that are actually deployed are often not designed with a human-centered approach. Herrera described the barriers to deploying LGBT trust, noting that he kind of deployed the app. As he says here, but it was like a prototype deployment. I had most of these functionalities working, so people could ask for help, people could post things, it would appear in the map, and people could ask for any other kind of support and this kind of stuff. I think that in the end, and this is something that really frustrated me at the time, for you to be able to deploy an app, you need a lot of money and you need a lot of people working with you. As a safety app, to keep people safe, it had to work well without any issues. So participants were also disappointed that the app was not fully deployed.
So in our discussion, we focus on a few main points that I will discuss here. First, trans technology creators are often embedded in trans communities. So trans tech creation is often both personally meaningful and focused on addressing community needs. It really matters that trans people are involved in trans tech design processes because trans people need technological solutions that actually address challenges that they face in the world. And one thing that we noted is that despite the empowering and potentially liberatory potential of trans technology, for many of the most successful human-centered design processes, technology was not actually deployed. So we have a few suggestions here for how to move community-based trans technology more towards deployment. First is setting up programs to bring designs from classrooms and academic research to deployment. Next is setting up matching programs for trans tech designers and developers. Also setting up programs to connect tech creators with the trans community members. And then finally, making more space for publishing on technology deployment and user studies. So thanks so much for listening.